Guitar Villains is brought to you by American Musical Supply. Just visit americanmusical.com for your unique coupon code. This is just for listeners of Guitar Villains. Anything you need, whether it's picks, guitar strings, cables, a capo, all those small little accessories, all the way up to the big stuff like a new guitar, an amp, all the gear you could ever want is at American Musical Supply. They also have no interest financing, so you can play now, pay later. Use the link in the description for your coupon code to use on your next gear purchase. Thanks to American Musical Supply for sponsoring Guitar Villains. Now let's get to the show. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of Guitar Villains. Today's guest is Andy Timmons, the guitar player's guitar player, or just an amazing guitar player. You be the judge. I think it's both, and I think this guy might be one of the nicest people I've ever had the privilege to chat with about music and life in general. Andy has a lot of great advice that spans the musical spectrum and can apply to everyday life. He starts off with maybe one of the most interesting, amazing musical moments ever caught on camera. Let's get into it. Guitar Villains, Andy Timmons. Welcome to Guitar Villains, the show where we deconstruct and decode the guitar. And Andy, I want to give you the people a little story right out of the gate to enjoy.
Okay.
I have a video here of a live show in Dallas, Texas, and Steve Vai is playing the guitar, and he walks down from the stage into the crowd. You're already laughing. And all of a sudden, his eyes light up, and the camera pans over, and there's you standing there in the crowd. He's like in the front row, and the band is still playing. Steve takes off his guitar and hands it over to you, and you immediately start wailing a crazy guitar solo off the cuff. There's few people in the world. You might actually be the only one who could take Steve Vai's guitar from him during a show, and it looks like you're having a great time.
Well, it's funny because I've known Steve for a long time. We first met actually in 1988, really early on. I just finished my first instrumental track called It's Getting Better, and he was in town with David Lee Roth. And the studio where I recorded my track, he had hired out to do an edit for a song called Damn Good Times that was going to be a single for David Lee Roth. And the studio was like, man, Steve Vai's going to be here, come meet him, like on the down low. And that's, so we met initially then, and then when I joined Ibanez, which was been 1991, then I started seeing him, of course, at different Ibanez functions, and then, getting to know him and playing together, a few times. Mm-hmm. So then when they started doing G3, every time they would come to Dallas, I was very honored that they would, invite me to come sit in and play, which is, as anybody out there would think, is pretty daunting to come on stage after Satriani and Vai, and the first one was Eric Johnson, have completely annihilated all things that are possible on the guitar. What are you gonna play? At the encore, right? Mm-hmm. So I've had lots of experience and great times with Steve, and of course, when he started his Favored Nations label, I was one of the first guys that he approached about being a part of it. So we have a lengthy relationship. So the video that you mentioned, he was doing I think it was the anniversary of Passion Warfare, maybe. And it was it was more than usual production. He says, man, please come to the show. But, it's not going to be, the best situation for you to play, but come hang and I'll see you after the show. Right. So, okay, great. I'm there with my wife and my other best buddy, a woman named Sylvia. Right. And so the show had been pretty lengthy, maybe going on 2.5 hours. So it was a song, and we kind of thought, well, the show's about to wrap up. They went to the restroom to go freshen up because we're going to go say hi to Steve, right? My wife goes, hold my water, I'll be right back, right? Well, then all of a sudden, here comes Steve wandering off the stage. He's got his wireless. Thomas is behind him, his tech, and they're kind of clearing the way, and he's strolling around. Now, he knew I was there, but he had no idea where I was sitting. He couldn't have possibly known where in the crowd, right? And so it's because it was late, some people had left, and he walks down, and like you say, fortunately, somebody had their cell phone. Oh, I say somebody. The entire crowd had their cell phones out, right? Because that's what we do now. So you see the look on Steve's face when he sees me. It's complete surprise, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm there. You are. And the beautiful thing about it is that he doesn't even, there's not even a thought. It's this immediate.
It's first instinct.
Here's my guitar. And if you look at the video, you can see him trying to hand me his pick.
I was gonna say that's like the funniest part is he's trying to hand you a pick and you're already going.
Are you kidding
classic
me?
guitar player.
If you're at a gig and you don't have a pick in your pocket just in case, you're not visualizing well enough. Because I've been to lots of shows where I wasn't planning on playing, but somehow I end up on stage, right? So I don't know if it's visualization or just that strong desire of, man, I wish. And it was happening during that concert because he had a couple of moments in the show that he had a pre-record of Satriani and a pre-record of John Petrucci where they kind of jammed along with Steve virtually via a pre-recorded segment, right? And I was like, man, I want to play, you know. And inside my head, I was like, so for that to happen, it was just kind of this magical. You couldn't have tried to plan it. It just happened.
Yeah.
And anyway, but that's funny you bring that up because it's a very fond memory. But it speaks volumes about Steve, how selfless he can be, you know.
Indeed.
He's like without thinking there, he just hands me his guitar. Anyway, what are you gonna do? Just try to play a few licks. And do the best
from what I could hear, it sounded good. And there's a reason I brought it up, not only because I think, you know, it's one of the coolest musical moments I've ever seen, but I want to ask you, there's this feeling of stage fright or fear that I think sometimes afflicts guitar players in the earlier stages of their playing or later stages, depending on how much experience you get. Whether that's like playing to a crowd or a guitar store, or even like family and friends. And you can sometimes
that's the most terrifying.
Yeah, like you lock up, right? It's like, I've never played guitar before. What's going on? Do you have? You obviously know this feeling. At some point, you had to grind through it. What is the key to getting through that kind of nervousness?
That's a great question, and there's lots of levels to that. Because when I first started playing, my first gig was my own 8th grade graduation dance. So I was 13. I got in a power trio with 2 older guys. And they had this gig lined up, and it was actually my own 8th grade graduation dance. So just terribly shy, really, you know, still to a degree. But I just remember just being completely terrified. Here's my entire, you know, circle of people that I grew up with for the past 8 years, and it's my first gig. And I remember just had my back turned most of the time, fiddling with my amplifier, you know, anything to not face the crowd, right? But continuing on with those players, I was in a band. From that point, I'd been in a band ever since, never not been in a band. So by the age of 15 or so, you know, we were playing in bars and gigging regularly. So it really became a situation where, you know, the more experience I got, I learned how to channel that anxiousness and that nervousness. And what that is, it's a good thing because it means you really want to do well. You know, you don't want to let yourself down. You don't want to let your bandmates down. You don't want to let the audience down. You know, there's the fear. Some of that is good. It means that you want to really do well. And so don't lose that. Hold on to that. But then you have to learn how to channel it into a positive thing. And so for me, it became an energy, sometimes maybe a bit too hyper or nervous, but, you know, I just learned. But I was very, very fortunate that I had these older people that I was in a band with that had gigs. So I was, you know, 4 nights a week from a young age, I was getting that experience. And so the nervousness and the you know, the anxiousness for me still doesn't go away. It's every gig. It doesn't matter how big or how small. I want to do well. I want, you know, I put that pressure on myself. Nobody's telling me, hey, we're expecting this very high level. It starts with me. And I think for all of us, that's a defining factor with, you know, how you treat anything in your life, how much pressure you put on yourself to want to do better when nobody's there to tell you to do it. You know, there has to be that passion and that desire to really work, you know. But again, there's, like I said, there's so many levels to that. There's some people that get so nervous that it can be debilitating. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, sometimes just facing those fears and trying to put yourself in situations where you have to address it and you have to kind of get through it.
I've always found that playing in the mirror, that was like my big revelation. Looking at myself that way, it's like somebody's watching. I would always practice in front of the mirror.
Okay.
And then, what you said is I think really the big takeaway here is it happens to everybody. It's not just,
Oh man.
and it's like, and it's also something that's healthy. So like it's about how you channel that excitement.
Yeah. And again, everybody's, psychological makeup is different. We all filter things and process things very differently, and so you might find some people that seem very overly confident, but I would imagine deep down somewhere in there is that insecurity, and that understanding. And part of my thing is like, it doesn't matter how well I might have played yesterday or 20, 30 years ago. It's all about right now. That's all we have. That's,
Yep.
So if I don't sound good right now, none of that in the past matters. It's like, oh, I'm letting myself down. I'm letting other people down. So that's always in play. That's really a great thing, because there's that ongoing pursuit of, you want to live up to what you're capable of, but you want to hopefully exceed that on a good day. There's just potential to transcend what your known abilities are, because that's in the process of creating live music. There's potential for things could fall apart, things could totally fold.
Yep.
And then you learn how to recover from that and hopefully get through it and not be like, oh, I'm going to focus on this bad thing that happened. What can I do to take this elsewhere, right? And sometimes that's where the cool stuff comes in. That's where, it's the happy accidents, and that's the beauty of live music, that, if there's room for that type of improvisation. So, yeah, I mean, so it's going to be unique for each individual, what their experience is, but there's a lot of, so there's two great quotes that come to mind when we're talking about this. One, and again, this is before internet, but hopefully it's somewhat accurate. It's attributed to Andre Segovia, the great classical maestro. Mm-hmm. And he had a very, kind of arrogant, self-assured student. It says, maestro, I never get nervous before I play. And purportedly Segovia, replied, well, one day when you have talent, you will.
Oh man.
So that was, again, how accurate this is, who knows? But the other one that I really love is attributed to Pablo Casals. And the basic idea of the story was, maybe he was in his 80s and he was being interviewed later in his life. He was the great virtuoso of the cello.
Yeah.
And the guy that he was interviewing just, proposed, maestro, let's just say he was 80 years old. You're 80 years old and you still practice 3 hours a day. Why? He goes, I'm starting to see some improvement. And that's, I'm 57 and that's exactly where I'm at. It's like, okay, it's like, you're doing okay, but you've got a long way to go. And it's just really embracing that and realizing you never get there is such an important part of what we do, especially as guitar players. There's so much awareness of all these other guys and how they do what they do, that it can be overwhelming. But you just got to realize, okay, well, I have to be the best me I can be, and as long as I'm learning a little bit every day, I really have found later in my life that's a major key to feeling good. I'm first and foremost a rock guitar player, right? I started off playing Kiss and Rush and Ted Nugent and Foghat and 70s rock, and that's my core. But then as I grew as a practicing, studying musician, jazz became a big part of my voice. Even though I didn't play out a lot as a jazz player, but because I listened so much to Oscar Peterson and Barney Kessel and Joe Pass and some of the early jazz guys, that it really influenced the way that I thought about music, the way I heard music. Because so much in jazz, you're really kind of, you're not forced, but it's handy to be able to navigate chord changes. Instead of, as rock players, we, at least growing up when I grew up, we tended to think things about key center and pentatonics, and you can make a world of music just from that and be amazing, right? But I was hearing rock players that had bits of that, like Lukather and Carlton. Mm-hmm. And then when Mike Stern came along, when I saw him on Saturday Night Live, it was 1981, and it was Miles Davis's kind of comeback. He'd retired for about 7 years and came back, and he had this amazing band with Al Foster on drums, Marcus Miller on bass, and Stern on guitar and percussion. And I saw this straggly hippie back there playing a Strat. I'm like, what's this guy? I didn't even know who Miles Davis was. I was studying jazz, but I was very guitar centric. I thought maybe Miles was the guy with the big cheeks, but of course that's Dizzy Gillespie.
Right.
But Mike started playing, and it was, Strat into Marshall kind of tone. I forget what, he might have been a twin he was playing through, but he clearly had a distortion box. But it was a Hendrixy tone, but there was that vocabulary that I was hearing on all the jazz bebop records, but with that sound. Mm-hmm. And I know that fusion guitar had happened before Mike Stern, of course McLaughlin and so many guys had played, but there was something about Mike's authenticity as there was a real rock blues vibrato. He had just this great, I'm going to do a bad impression, but really wide, just energetic vibrato, but on these chromatic ideas. And it was an epiphany. I was like, it's like it all kind of came together, and it's like, okay, that's possible. So I've gotten to know Mike over the years as well, kind of like Steve. We started running into each other either at NAMM shows and it was a music camp where we first played together, and I got to sit with my hero and play,
Yeah.
So we, now when I go to New York, he invites me over and we play a little bit, but he's doing online Skype lessons. So I surprised him, and I bought a lesson. And,
that's funny.
Because he says, man, why don't you call me? He's like, I want to, you're giving lessons. I'm contributing to my hero,
Yeah.
And we hung out, and he gave me so much in an hour. I mean, again, that's like, he's an encyclopedia of great knowledge. So, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm revisiting once again, my college years of being a student and playing jazz standards every morning. That's what I do first thing when I wake up. I get my coffee and sit here and play with the iReal book, which is a great app you can use to pick a standard, play at any key, any tempo, and practice like that.
That sounds peaceful.
What's that?
That sounds like a peaceful way to wake up.
It is, but it's a great workout at the same time because all these tunes usually have, there's a lot of chord changes happening, so it gets my fingers going, it gets my brain going, mm-hmm. and even if I'm playing rock later in the day or whatever it is of my own music, it's just a great way of keeping my mind and my fingers kind of going.
Awesome, man.
And so, like I say, like Pablo Casal's, like I'm starting to see some improvement, little bits, It's
finally happened.
It's finally happened. I'm starting to show, potential.
Well, we're gonna get a lot into your melodic choices in particular, because
sure.
I definitely, with that context, I have some questions, but I want to get into your supervillain doppelganger, because this show is called Guitar Villains, and I'm
dying to know what you came up with. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I like to compare these villains to the guests of the show, and I think, there's a couple ways I could have gone, but when you said the Joker, I've actually already appointed the Joker to Corey Wong.
Okay.
But his Joker iteration was the original Batman, the 1989 movie with Michael Keaton.
Okay.
So he was Jack Nicholson.
I'm a Bob Keane DC Comics guy. Yeah.
So he was the Jack Nicholson kind of Joker because of the Prince, the Prince stuff, the funky Prince element. But your 60s era is perfect because from what I know of that particular iteration of the Joker is he wasn't like a mass murdering psychopath. He was actually like a mischievous prankster. And he relied on like harmless weapons like the sneezing powder and the squirting flowers and the non-lethal joy buzzers. And I think you're actually a lot like this from a guitar perspective. You have like unlimited tricks up your sleeve with your combination of like melody, technique, overall great feel. And I never know what note you're going to play next, but usually the notes that you do play make me laugh. And I mean that in like the most complimentary way. I'm
used to being laughed at. Thank you.
Yeah. It's definitely a compliment. Like, I just can't believe he hit that note right there. And
my wife laughs at me. My son, you. No.
Yep. It's usually a bend, by the way. The note.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually a bend. The most hilarious.
I'm a bendy guy.
The most hilarious notes you play are bends. So
Okay.
we'll get more into that. But 60s Joker I think is perfect for you.
Cool.
So first things first, I want to get into a couple softball lobs. I call this segment Burning Questions. So these are rapid fire questions, as you can tell by the fire.
I'm not sure how softball and burning go together, but okay.
Yeah. Don't question the production elements.
I can't even. I'm just going to go roll with it. Baby.
Yeah. So these are questions that must be answered, but we don't really know why they must be answered. They just must. So rapid fire questions. You ready?
Ready.
What gauge pick do you use?
1.14 Dunlop Tortex Jazz 3, and it's the most consistent part of my tone since 1984. I've been using the same pick for that many years.
Wow. What is the string gauge that you prefer?
It's now 10 to 46. I was started off as 9s when I was a kid, but graduated to 10s. And it can be 11 or 12s on certain guitars if it's a jazzier kind of thing.
What is your number one guitar currently?
Always my AT100, the original one from 1994. This little guy right here, Hello.
Beautiful.
Yeah, 1994.
What is your number one amp currently?
The Mesa Boogie Lone Star. Has been since about 2005.
Wonderful. And the last question, what is your favorite guitar pedal?
Ooh, good question.
That isn't the JHS Andy Timmons model.
I would be a little biased to say my own signature pedal. I mean, the classic Ibanez Tube Screamer is pretty freaking great. If you had a classic vintage amp, a guitar, and that pedal, it's going to be loud, but you're going to get a good tone. You're going to have to crank everything up, and that's hard to beat the original Tube Screamer. That's a great one.
Now we're going to move on to Name Those Notes.
One note. No, I can't.
This is a segment where I'll play you a quick sequence of guitar notes from songs that you've recorded over the years.
Okay.
And you have to tell me what song those notes come from. So we're going to see how well you know your catalog.
Self-trivia. Interesting.
Indeed. We're going to start with something easy that I think you'll get, and things may get progressively harder.
Okay.
So here is the first batch of notes.
Well, you're pulling live versions. That sounds like a bad YouTube video of Electric Gypsy.
Ding, ding, ding. So this is from a live performance at a place called Reggie's Music Joint in Chicago.
Oh, that's a really good looking video. I remember somebody, in fact, Mike Dane sent me that because it includes a good bit of his bass solo piece before that. And so whoever recorded that night had a really good HD camera. I mean, the sound is what it is. It's the club sound, but I remember that being a really sharp visual video anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great recording, obviously the recording of Electric Gypsy, but this is a rare case, and you can agree or not, but in my opinion, this is a rare case where a live performance may have surpassed the greatness of the recording.
Yeah.
And this doesn't happen often. Like, we've seen it a couple times with Eric Johnson's Cliffs of Dover in Austin, or Johnny Cash live at Folsom Prison Blues, or Nirvana's About a Girl on the MTV Unplugged. It's really a sign of a song that it's a sign of a song that's truly right in the artist's wheelhouse. So congrats for being able to like compose a song like that.
I appreciate that. And that's always a joy to play. That and Cry for You tend to be highlights for me emotionally, just because as they've grown over the years, but there's still plenty to say. They're different every night, and they're each very stretchable. We can extemporize a bit more than what the original recordings have. So I love playing those old tunes.
Yeah, that's a great one. I definitely recommend. If you type in Electric Gypsy Andy Timmons, you'll find it. It's a great performance. So moving on to the next batch of notes.
Yeah, okay. Deliver Us. That's the studio version of Deliver Us, right?
Yes, it is. This is my favorite tone of yours.
Okay.
It's from the album Resolution.
Yes.
Can you do a quick geek out of how
Yeah.
you describe your perfect guitar tone?
Ooh.
Doesn't have to be this tone in particular. I think this is your best recorded tone, but that's just me.
No. That record is unique in the fact that it was all Marshall, clean. It was all vintage, clean Marshall with a 3-knob tube driver and usually an Echoplex, with two different, a different setting on each amp. It's always 2 amps at the same time. Oh. But that was the first recording that we did where it was just one guitar performance. So so we spent time like, if it's going to be one tone, it better be a damn good tone. So sometimes we'd take weeks just trying to get the right sound for a certain song, And and I'm proud of, I was fortunate to have Mike Dane, at that time working with me, producing and engineering. He had a home studio, so we could take that kind of time and not be worried about expense. And it just, the combination of his taste and my taste, we kept pushing each other to drive further to try to improve. And Eric Johnson was very much a benchmark, and kind of not wanting to sound like him, but wanting to explore, there's the mythology about all the things that he's gone through to get great sound. And and anytime you go down any of the rabbit holes that you might initially chuckle at, you quickly find that, oh shit, this does matter, and it's not just a little difference, it's a big difference, right? Mm-hmm. But that was that particular, the majority of that record, it was before I had the Lone Star, but it was it was a 69 Marshall, 68, 69 era Marshall super lead and a 78 JMP, but both running loud and clean, tube distortion pedal, and tape echo, and that was it. And with the idea that we didn't want to have to use any EQ and any processing. We wanted to capture it all with the gear and mic placement. That's how we did it. It was so as natural everything was to be as natural as possible, including drums and bass.
Well, you nailed it. Nice work.
Thank you, man.
All right, moving on to the next group of notes. Getting a tiny bit more difficult, but I think we're still all right. Here we go.
Okay. Martin Miller, Still Got the Blues?
Yes, it is.
I wouldn't have recognized, because I saw the video when it came out, but I wouldn't recognize what I played. I recognized the chord changes and so it was deduction by chord change.
A little bit of ear training for you to get your afternoon blazing through.
Sure.
This seems like walking into a candy store for a guitar player. This particular tune to play over. You got the great band behind you and a blank canvas for like the most expressive Gary Moore-esque bends. And can you talk about bends in particular? Because this is easily what I consider to be maybe one of your trademarks and something that I preach from my soapbox. The technique of bending, I just think is easily the most important aspect of guitar playing to develop. And I think it kind of gets addressed either after the fact or not at all after a lot of other techniques. So can you talk a little bit about bending?
Well, it's weird because I never thought about it when I was learning. It was just part of what I was hearing. I don't have my guitar plugged in anymore, but it was what I was hearing the guys playing the basic blues rock doing. And it was just so I would just imitate what I heard. And so when I got, I had all this experience playing at Evansville, Indiana, where I grew up. And when I was, 19, when I finally transferred down to the University of Miami as a jazz guitar major, all these guys were coming up to me, these really great players that they were more in the jazz world. And, the rock guy wanted to be a jazzer and all the jazz guys wanted to be a rocker, right? We're all, that was the beauty, is that we all hung together and learned from each other, but they were always, man, how do you bend? How do you bend in tune? How do you do that? And I went, you just do it. What's the problem? I somehow very naturally developed how I do it, or how I did it originally. Now the more I've gotten into teaching and with my guitar experience site, where I'm continually trying to explain, how I'm doing what I'm doing. Disclaimer: I went from a guitar tune to 440s. Now this is tuned down to a half step, because my next guitar experience video is going to be Hiroshima from Your Ecstasy. And half of those tunes were tuned down a half step. So my bending may be...
I'm sure you'll get by.
Dig that ToneWorks tone. So not bad for being on the half step down. So when I'm talking about and teaching it, the hardest thing for a lot of players is to bend a note in tune. Of course, you got to learn how to get strength. And when I'm bending, again, this is through having to try to explain something that came natural for many years, but there's a lot of working parts. Of course, you've got if you're going to bend with your ring finger, and I'm bending on the G string here. Of course, you want to use your other two fingers behind that for strength, so you've got quite a bit of flesh on the string already. But I've got a very narrow neck, and I'm not sure if my hand is normal size or whatever, but I will wrap my thumb around so it's adding a bit of strength, but then it's also, I'm gripping the underside of the neck. It's a bit of tension on the other side of the finger as well.
So what you're doing right there, I want to move on now from the 101 into the expressive elements that you do, which is you bend and then you slide while bending. Whilst, my UK friends, you bend while.
You can use whilst if you like, yeah.
Yeah. So, but talk about what goes through your mind when you are targeting these intervals, and it's usually in anticipation, like kind of moving from one position. Do you think of it positionally, like I'm going to get up here now and it's going to be a very melodic avenue to reach that point?
It's all in pursuit of whatever melody that I'm hearing. And then I guess just in that nano instance of whatever processing happens, So, a real common bend for me is that minor third. If I'm in C minor, I'll bend from that G on the G string. I'm bending from the G to the B flat, and then I might either resolve it back down to the G, or I might resolve it like an implied 2/5. So bending from the G to B flat, then releasing it at a half step to the A. Or up to the tonic. So I can give you a quick exercise just to kind of help get to that point. If you take just think of any key in any scale. And just kind of bend through the scale. So let's do an ascending. So bending from the C, staying in C minor. Just take a C minor Dorian. When you're bending, also a good exercise is our general inclination is everything's got vibrato on it.
Yeah,
it's really difficult to play a note. We always want to do something with it, and there's a nervous energy tendency that we plug into. Same with bending, because part of it's insecurity, because I think maybe we're thinking, well, it's not going to be in tune, so if I have lots of vibrato, I'll surround it, and that could be a nice sound, But man, for the real dead-on accuracy, practice without vibrato. Check with the fretted note, but natural minor. So you're right in that it can be, it can be one of the most expressive parts of playing. It's like what Jeff Beck does with his tremolo bar.
Mm-hmm.
Is it tremolo or vibrato? I don't know what that thing's called.
I've gotten in trouble for this by people saying, excuse me, don't you know the difference between tremolo and vibrato, idiot?
It's never too late to not know.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good one. I should.
Maybe I just coined a phrase. It's never too late to not know something. Okay, so I'm 57. I don't know.
There you go.
But that's a really good exercise, and it's about building strength, because with all these guitar techniques, it's really about control. It's having the hand strength and the some maturity that comes with experience, with being able to to really execute the simple things with great quality, and that tends to be what separates some of the really great players from cool players, but that have a way to go, right? It's that control of vibrato and just basic techniques, to tuning, overall tuning. Mm-hmm. That's the Tommy Emmanuel quote. He said to me was, that's what separates the men from the boys, or the women from the girls, or however you want to politically.
He said the same thing. He was actually on this podcast.
Great.
And he talked about tuning perfection and how important it is to him, and like Stevie Ray Vaughan, and it's like that's what separated SRV from Hendrix, is the tuning. Neither one is like better than the other, but it's like it's a real sound.
It's going to be something that even the casual listener won't necessarily quantify, but they'll feel it, they'll know it. It's just a more pleasant thing. I've known Tommy a bit. I feel like I'm name dropping, but I've had the extreme pleasure of getting to hang and play with Tommy a few times. And last time he was in Dallas, he invited me to come to his gig, and I got there during his sound check, and he invited me, "Hey, come stand right here." And he had his monitors and his AER guitar amp. He wanted me to hear his tone where he was standing, and genuine chill bumps right now. It was just one of the greatest guitar sounds, and a lot of it was how fucking in tune it was.
Yeah.
And he's playing, and I'm yelling at him. It's like, man, you've got auto tune in your fingers. You could just. But it's true that the longer you play, you learn how to cheat things, because it's an imperfect instrument. There's all these kind of tuning devices and different fretting systems, and some of those things help certain things. There's no one cure all that I've found, but it's guys like Eric Johnson. Satriani's another guy, very in tune. I mean, obviously a lot of great players that are generally, but some, and Tommy's one of them, just really take it to a very high level. It's very inspiring. And
then there's somebody like John Frusciante, who actually detunes his G string a little bit to get that perfect triad sound on like Under the Bridge or something, where the recorded version, you can't, like, there's certain chords on the guitar that are inherently out of tune just a little bit. And that was one of the, I think it was my friend Paul Davids who revealed this in a YouTube video, where he actually detuned his G string a little bit to make that chord perfect just for the recording. And then he would tune it back up, like, just for a compositional,
and that's something that by the time I did the Sgt. Pepper record with my band, that's when I really learned how to do that, and how to be okay with realizing I need to cheat the tuning to make this song work. And it would be, and you would normally be, maybe one, sometimes two strings would have to go sharp or flat to get a commonality of tuning, and different keys will present different issues. Like you say with the John Frusciante track, that's not surprising, and it's actually probably more common than a lot of people think. Mm-hmm. If you were to really ask a lot of players on the level that we're talking about, they would probably speak to, oh yeah, well I've had to do this and that on certain songs. It gets harder live to spend the time to get it right, like you will in the studio, to really get the tuning just right. But in that instance that, well, this is going to be forever, and I'm going to try to get it as close as I can. But I remember there being a lot of moments in the Sgt. Pepper recording that, I discovered that out of necessity.
Well, that was a fun tangent, Benz. We have bending can take you places, people.
But it is. I mean, it's all about tuning. That separates a great soulful bend from something that's just completely cringeworthy.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And I've participated in both.
Haven't we all?
I should humbly say, it's like I still do both. Yeah.
So
Equal opportunity employer.
Yeah, exactly. We have one more batch of notes here in this little segment.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on a second.
I have a longer version if you need it.
No. I've got it. I know what it is.
Okay.
Crazy Nights by Danger.
Yes, it is. And this was a really this is from Danger. Would you call it glam metal band from the 80s?
Well, I guess it's mainly it's called a hair band.
Band, whatever you want to say. I had a lot of fun. I'd never really dived into Danger, but it was fun exploring that music. And you had a pretty sweet look back then, man. I mean, you look great now too. But go check out Andy Timmons' Danger on Google. There may have been some Aquanet
involved.
So this performance that I pulled, this performance that I pulled, I don't know, is this on your platform, the Stage It platform? I think it may have been, because you're playing it live. It's recent.
Okay.
And you're playing along with that song, so that's where I got this.
Because I didn't have any tracks from like the studio sessions for the Danger stuff, I played along with it. But it really, I was pretty amazed at how many fans were very happy that I did it. And in fact, the other Danger guys came online and were part of the festivities. Yeah. But I had to play along with the original recording.
So what is Stage It? I hadn't heard of that.
It's like some guys are doing Twitch and some people are doing a variety of different things. It's a platform that allows artists to go online and do live streaming gigs. Mm-hmm. Some people do it as simply as sitting on their laptop strumming an acoustic guitar, but I've got a studio setup where I've got my amps in my room, but cabinets in another room. So I've always got a stereo Mesa rig mic'd up with two 2x12 cabs and all my tracks from all my records. And I've done it. I did 87 Stage It gigs last year.
Wow.
Throughout when the pandemic started, I of course all the tours were being canceled. So what am I going to do? And I have a friend that's in a band called Bowling for Soup.
I know
really great rock band. Yeah, they're out of Dallas, and so I was seeing him. Jarrett Reddick is the singer, and I was seeing him on Facebook doing these Stage It gigs. I thought, well, I just gave him a DM and said, man, show me how to do this. I got to learn how to do this. So it just kind of snowballed. But the funny thing was, the gig that I saw him promote said 2 p.m. US, 8 p.m. UK. So I thought he was doing 2 gigs. That was promoting the same gig with the time difference. His fan base is UK and US. But in my head, I'm like, he's doing 2 shows a day. That's what I'm going to do. So by being kind of stupid or just misreading the advert, I decided I'm going to do 2 shows every Saturday, and I did. For like I say, 87 gigs, however many in a row that was.
Holy hell!
Until I hit a wall and thought I need to stop doing this for a while. So I've been on a 3-4 week break, and this coming Saturday will be my first gigs in a month.
Oh, right on. So you do them every weekend, or what's the schedule?
Yeah, I'm doing them every Saturday, so I'll go back to doing them every Saturday. So Stage It, you just log into stageit.com, you type in Andy Timmons Official, and it's pay what you can. People can literally pay a nickel to come to the gig. But then you have the ability to tip the artist. So it's like when people do Facebook Live and they have a Venmo or something. It's kind of like a way of doing things like that, but on a proper platform. And with the help of my longtime engineer, Rob Wexler, we've got an application called OBS that you're able to really get a really high quality feed. So audio and video are great. Mm-hmm. And people always compliment the sound. I've got a great tone on there. And there's been some people that have come to every show. The same fans will just show up, and it's turned into a really great community. A lot of friends have been made, just amongst all the different folks that show up. So it's been really gratifying to be, and again, because we couldn't go out and gig, to have a place to play. But the thing that really spoiled me was I get done, I do the 2:00 show, have lunch, prepare for the 8:00 show, do the 8:00 show, 9:00. I'm like, what's for dinner? I'm home.
When did you put together that your friend was only doing 1 show and you're like, oh?
I'm not sure how long it took to figure out, but I was already down the path. So
yeah,
it might have dawned on me a couple of weeks in or whatever. It was like, all right, I'm already kind of made up.
Yeah.
I'm funny like that. Once I kind of make up my mind, it's kind of hard to deter me from going down that path. And my wife every now and then, because it can be kind of stressful because each Saturday there'll be two different shows. It wouldn't be the same show twice, largely. Mm-hmm. So there was that pressure of like, okay, two different sets of material and trying to present it in the best way I can and triggering tracks and then taking care of lights and video and making sure all the things are streaming properly. You know what you deal with to do your podcast, plus with the added thing of performance. Now I've got to let all that go and just try to play the best I can.
Yeah, it's been great to watch artists who are primarily on stage musicians kind of come into this world that is and how many people like have a newfound understanding and respect for. I think it's like actually very, despite all the terrible things that have happened in the last year, like there's going to be a lot of silver lining that we're able to take from this when everybody comes back live. I just got my first vaccine, by the way, so
congratulations.
We're making steps forward.
Where are you, Tyler? Where are you located?
I live in Nashville.
Okay, well, congrats, man. Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated. I got two Pfizers, and I'm rocking. I'm still. I'm going to still wear the mask. I'm going to be careful, and in respect of other people, because I guess even if you're vaccinated, you can still carry the virus, and
correct.
So, you know what I mean. So, I think there's a lot that we're going to keep learning, but why not be careful? Because we're getting close, man. It's like I'm in Texas, so they took away the mask mandate, and they're opening up 100%, and it feels too soon. But
yeah. I was in the ICU for 8 days, so
buddy,
I'm an advocate for all the safety measures. But
with COVID,
COVID pneumonia actually.
Man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was terrible, but I made it through and all good. But yeah, I mean, to put a bow on that, I just think live music, when it does come back, like what is the first note you're gonna play? Is it gonna be like? Oh!
It's going to be loud. I know that. It's going to be loud and confident and happy.
Yes.
No telling what it's going to be.
A beautiful major third.
I hope so. Something.
So I want to talk a little bit about your Guitar Experience website, because you and I actually have a similarity. We both have subscription-based learning platforms, and I just think that is that is the best way to learn, I think.
What is your platform? What is yours called?
Mine's called Guitar Super System, so we can have a battle on who has the cooler name of the site. I think yours is pretty good too. So Guitar Experience, can you detail? I mean, people know how subscription websites work, but what would you say are great qualities to have as a teacher? I always love asking educators this because that's how I started, was teaching guitar, and then I got into everything else. But what do you find is a great quality of a teacher?
It's hard for me to be objective, but I can humbly say that I think I've developed a way of communicating that's just natural. I never have a preconceived script, or I should begin by saying the main feature of my site is that every month there's a new song of the month, and I'm going through my entire catalog, and there must be over probably 36 of my tunes are already fully transcribed. So I do a playthrough. I play the song on camera. I put some of those up on YouTube, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But then I have a guy in Brazil that transcribes it, and it's on regular notation tab, but also in the Guitar Pro format, so people can actually have the app and play the transcription. So that way I can check it to make sure it's accurate without having to actually physically read the whole thing, which is, when it comes to guitar phrasing, it's a very difficult type of reading.
It might be the hardest.
It may be. So, but then along with that, I sit in front of the camera and I talk about every note. I talk about how I composed it, the gear I used, and I go through and explain it. And then I play very slowly each phrase. And in real time, and basically I'm sitting with you explaining, how I'm doing what I'm doing. And sometimes, I will know exactly what to say about it. Sometimes I'm kind of discovering things in real time. And within that, coming up with examples of how to practice these. Like I was just talking about the bending. That's a real common thing. Here's how to strengthen that. Here's how to reinforce that. So it's through learning, some people may want to learn the whole song. They may just want to learn a lick or two. But it's also become very valuable, and through the people that have responded to me of how much they love the way I teach. It's just because, I'm explaining each of the techniques. So whether you learn the whole song or not, there's going to be a lot of information that I'm getting recorded. That's just about general guitar playing, along with the specific components of whatever song and technique is involved. So, and it wasn't something that I didn't enjoy teaching when I was younger. I felt it was, I don't think I had the confidence. I guess I didn't really think I had that much to offer. But I guess with more age and experience, and again, some of these things, like when you mentioned bending and how so much of it came naturally just because I kept doing it. I didn't know, nobody said, here's how you bend, practice this. It's just, no, here's a sound. And then I would, it's like I just had to learn by ear. So it was all ear driven. But now we obviously in an age where it's, we have this ability to share our knowledge, and but some of it's going to have to be me like figuring out a way of explaining something that I developed naturally. But over time, it seems like it comes very naturally to me to explain these things in the way that I do. And I share everything. I don't hold anything back, completely honest and open. It's like the way I am in life, I am as a teacher. I think it's like, I want to help other people. I genuinely get excited when I see that I've connected with another player and that they're, part of my thing on Stage It is that, but like I said, they have the ability to tip you. So the highest tipper gets an hour Skype lesson with me for every show that I do.
That's awesome.
And I remember a couple of the early lessons that I had. There's a guy that I still see every week as a student, my friend Dennis, and he was just wanting to know how do I play more melodically. I said, well, learn melodies. Obviously, it's kind of obvious, but emulate the singer. Don't emulate the guitar player. Emulate the singer. Who's your favorite singer? Aretha Franklin. Okay, well. So the next week he came back, and this is a guy, a little older than me, not a young pup. Came back and had Dr. Feelgood note for note along with Aretha's vocal. I literally welled up with tears because I thought, not only did he take my advice, but it freaking sounded great. I was like, wow, that's really cool. As a teacher, you might recognize that not every student's going to like take to heart everything you say and do the work, but it's always so gratifying when you do make that connection and find that student that the light bulb is on and they're like, yeah, okay, give me some more of that. So it's gratifying for me to have a platform to share my life of guitar. That's really what the site's about. And there's other bits of me sharing, the folks I've met over time and some of my practice tips and things that I'm practicing. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of additional content, but the main focus is those songs of the month. So, telemarketer, hello. I thought I had that on silent. My apologies. How rude.
No problemo. I was going to say, I think that kind of that explanation, I think, is exactly the meat and potatoes of a great guitar teacher, which is your teaching is musical. It's not just, bland black and white off the cuff, like scales or metronome clicking. There's elements of that, but being able to apply concepts to music immediately, even if the person doesn't understand it, they can feel what it's supposed to be like and get excited about it because it's musical. And I think that's a quality of all my favorite teachers, and how I try to teach as well, is just like, here's the thing, and this is what it does to you. And then you can kind of break it down a little bit more, and it sounds like that's kind of the way you use it.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of that too is the note choice, what note you're choosing to play at what time. And we talk a lot about that too. It's that melodic direction, that voice leading. That's so important to it, because that choice is really what sets apart something that sounds more scalar or black and white, or if it's emotional, So combined with the right technique, but the right note at the right time, that starts to come together in what you're talking about. But yeah, I guess I was fortunate that I grew up without a teacher initially, because I was just playing with records. So it was always musical. There wasn't exercises. And when I did start taking lessons, I was 16 and I was already playing professionally. So then when I got the reading lessons and some more of the didactic stuff, it was cool because I was already playing and I was always having fun. But at that point I wanted the knowledge. It wasn't tedious. It was like, this means more. This means more knowledge is better. So it's got to be fun. It's got to be musical. That really is the key to encourage the student. It's got to be fun for us to do. Like I said, what I'm practicing now, it's bringing me great joy to play some of these West things that it's part of my DNA. I've heard it so much, but now now I'm doing the work to figure it out. And it's joyous, and it makes the process that much more fun to sit there and play along with Wes, note for note, and try to figure out, always marveling, like, how the hell did he, and it was all improvised. You could hear different performances of the same song, go, nothing like what he recorded, and it's just as great.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit. You're trying to get into the workings of I call it the oral act. I did a course for True Fire called Melodic Muse. And they encouraged me to do something based on melody. And I had to come up with a term that explained how I felt about it, which is, our melodic direction, our melodic muse is just, it's a combination of all the things that we've taken in that we've loved, and we've either just absorbed that we've loved or that we've learned. But it's like a library. It's like, if I hear this kind of couple of notes together, there's something about my experience that makes it's already anticipating where I would like it to go. It's kind of informing me because of that collection of experiences. And so I said, what is that? It's not intelligence, but it's like the intelligence of the ear. So I came up with oralect instead of intellect. And
I like it.
I think that's a good way of saying it. And I talked about it a lot with how did Lennon and McCartney become such great writers? Well, they learned a shit ton of songs. They were playing 8 hours a night in Hamburg and ran out of 3-chord Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly pretty quickly. And they started learning show tunes, just stuff they heard, stuff from their parents' record collection. Till There Was You, there was no rock bands playing. All these, chromatic passing chords and 2/5s, modulations, all these things. And so when it came time to make their own music, they had this library. So sometimes there was verbatim lifting and stealing, but the melodic ear, both Lennon and McCartney had great melodic ears, and it wasn't verbatim, taking of things, but it was because they had all this experience and having been moved by certain things, and then there they would appear, in some fashion that it becomes their own, it becomes their own thing.
Totally.
So that's a big part of the deal is the note choice, what you choose to play and when,
So Andy, finally, to loop in your guitar supervillain alter ego,
I can't wait.
I have one final question for you.
Okay. All right.
I really want to channel that villainous energy here.
Okay.
This is your chance to say your piece. What do you believe about the guitar that most guitar players might think was crazy?
What do I believe about the guitar?
This could be it could be like a hard truth that guitar players need to hear, or something that and others don't, or a misconception about the instrument, or whatever you want. Do you believe about the guitar playing? Others might not.
I think I believe we're just scratching the surface. There's people that think that, rock is dead and everything's been done. And I think that's complete crap. I think that what Jeff Beck has done, what Pat Metheny has done to a degree, what is possible on the instrument is we're just beginning to get there. The level of expression that I think is possible with the instrument, I think is profound, and it has a long way to go. And that's the way I feel about my playing. I know what I want to express, but I don't have the technique to do it yet.
And you're going to convey that on your next album, right?
I'm going to convey it on my next note somehow. It's like, it's going to be. It's like I talk about Jeff Beck a lot because he started with the Yardbirds, and Shapes of Things is one of the greatest rock solos ever. He could have stopped then, but then he did the Jeff Beck group, which was kind of the template for Led Zeppelin. And if you look at the history, and then the stuff with Jan Hammer, he continued to grow and never repeated himself. And then he does a record like Emotion and Commotion and captures things that I thought weren't possible to capture in a recording, that feeling, that I'd witnessed live millions of times, but never heard it captured. Then he captured it. So, and he's not stopping. I think that's such inspiration. And I don't know. Whether that's something that nobody else believes. I don't know that, but that's something that it's in my heart, and I kind of feel to be true that we've got a long way to go. Why not keep pushing the envelope? And there's so many great players that are doing insane things. You
Agreed.
Just browse the internet and you see it on Instagram. So then it's down to just making great music and making some music that means something. So really wanting to develop the technique of expressing yourself, whatever it may be. It may be technical virtuosity, which can mean speed and insane abilities, but it could also mean, the ear and the heart and soul that makes some music that again really means something to some people. So those are my goals. Of course, I want the insane technique. I may never get it, but I'm going to keep practicing. Right?
It's pretty good where it is.
But it helps me be the best me I can be.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. It took a long time to realize that. We got to be comfortable with ourselves and realize that I'm not going to be like that guy. Or I can't play like Jennifer Batten. I can't play like Josh Meader. These incredible players, but I can play like me. And so why don't I honor whatever gift I have and do the best I can with what I got. And keep pushing that as far as I can go.
Maybe the best advice of the whole show is right there.
Hey. End on a high note,
yeah.
man. End on a high note. And I got jingles just thinking about it.
So Andy, as we wind down here, I want to thank you for taking your time to be on Guitar Villains. It's been a great privilege to talk with you and share insights. I look forward to seeing what treacherous plots you devise next in your musical endeavors. Well,
lots to come. I've got a record that it's already recorded. Josh Smith, a great friend of mine, great blues player.
Oh yeah,
produced a record at his studio with me right before COVID, back in January, and so that's going to come out later. This is probably middle of the year. Really fun record, a little different than what I normally do, and it sounds killer. So that'll be coming out. So new stuff soon. I've got that Red Coach record with the Bissonette brothers. It's if you like fusiony, cool pop, funky Latin stuff.
Beautiful. I'm going to listen to all of it. It's all going in the list.
Go on the list, man. So that's all the plugs I got. So keep playing and have fun, man. But thanks for the interview. I enjoyed this. It's really fun to talk to you.